And welcome back to Open Your Eyes on this lovely Wednesday morning. And we're about to jump on into our final segment for the morning. The Image Factory. We're about to launch a book, and the name of the book is, I'll tell her right now. In to tell us more about it, Ivory Kelly, who is an author. Yes. And Yasser Musa, no stranger to us from the Image Factory, guys. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So. This morning we had to mention it this morning. The name of the book is actually Pengerang. And a lot of people would use that word. For me, I used to use it as, okay, just to chill. Panada, Pengerang, Pengerang. But the name of the book is Pengerang. Again, guys, good morning. And let's jump on into this. You know, it is a launch. And then again, the word Pengerang. Talk to us about it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So Pengereng is one of the beautiful Creole onomatopoeias, kind of like bamberging both.
Yeah.
Yes, Pengereng.
I haven't heard that in a long time. Go ahead.
It denotes the sound that is made when something, especially a metallic object, falls to the floor. Pengereng. So literally, it's a sound. But figuratively, it also refers to a situation in which things fall apart or become chaotic or an upheaval. Yeah. And so the reason why I chose that beautiful Creole word for the title of the book is because in both of the stories contained in the book, each protagonist has a Pengereng in his or her life that they have to now try and pick up the pieces going forward.
You said both of the stories.
Yes.
So there are two stories in the book.
It's a collection of short stories.
Oh,
relatively,
short stories.
Yes,
Okay.
It's a collection of short stories, two relatively long short stories.
Yeah.
And the first story is presented in English and then in its Creole translation.
And not just your own version of Creole.
Well, it's the version of Creole that I deem to be suitable given the characters and situations in the story. It's a contemporary literary story. Yeah. And in translating it from English to Creole, I had to take into consideration several things. The age of the protagonist, the age and education level, socioeconomic background, more or less, of the narrator or narrators. All of those things are considered.
I want to step back a minute and just find out what led you to this point. You know, you are a lecturer in English, and you're venturing into producing these short stories in Creole as well as English. You've been writing and you've won a few literary awards as well.
Yes.
What made you go to this publication?
Because Creole is my first language. I am a language major and I've always loved languages, all languages. And it is such a very important aspect of my own personal identity, my Creole language. And also, on a national level as a Belizean, I'm very cognizant of the role that the Creole language plays as a unifying element among us in Belize. Across all ethnic groups, we Belizeans, virtually all of us, use Creole in our everyday interactions. And so it is a Belizean identity marker. Yeah. Yes, I grew up speaking only Creole at home. I started to learn English in school. My English is pretty good. I have a master's degree in English. I'm very literate in English. However, in my own mother tongue, I am, semi-literate. And so I started 2 years ago to teach myself to read and write Creole. And I did so largely with the help of the dictionary and with the encouragement of my Creole advocate friends, Sylvana Odds being one of them. Yeah. And I started a little Facebook project, I put together a little flashcard with a word of the week in Creole and a sentence. And then I encouraged some of my friends to join in and to add their own sentences in Creole each week. We did that for 2 years, 53 weeks of that, and we spread it out over 2 years. And in the midst of that project, I felt that I wanted a greater challenge, more experience in writing Creole. And at that time, I was in the middle of compiling this slim version collection. And I thought, what better way to give myself an opportunity to improve my Creole writing skill than to write a long story in Creole. So I translated the longer of the 2 stories in here into Creole. And I am improving nicely. I'm still at about a standard 2 level as I became when I was here. But along with some of my classmates, my Facebook classmates, Creole classmates, I aspire to, after about 2 years, to be at least at a standard 6 level in my Creole literacy. Yeah,
this is such an important part of cultural preservation, and we don't talk about it enough. I think Creole is one of those things that we love and embrace, but we don't see how important it is to formalize it, for lack of a better word. We know Dr. Woods worked tirelessly putting together the dictionary, but even to this day, people have a hard time writing, spelling, and even reading. I started to read some of the Creole words, and I said, wow, I would have spelled it completely different. If I didn't have a dictionary or whatnot to look in, it would have been a whole different version. So how important is Pengereng in moving us forward in the cultural preservation of the language itself?
I think potentially very important because it is a contemporary story, and the way the language is used reflects what I think is the way we actually use Creole today. The characters in the story, for most of the story, are millennials. They are my daughter's age, you know, the generation that's going to be leading us very soon. And so we have a written record, right, of how the language sounds and feels and looks and can be expressed. And I think the story demonstrates that our language is vast. The Creole language is not limited. A lot of people attempt to limit not only Belize Kriol, but Creoles in general. To limit their potential, but one can express any idea, however abstract, however sophisticated, in our Creole language. And that was one of my deliberate attempts in writing, in translating this story, to show that you can write poetry in Creole. There's a lot of poetic elements in the story, and I hope I've been able to translate that in the story.
I think it still needs to come to light much more. I'll tell you why. You know, you go a lot of places and they'll tell you, you can't talk Creole, because you know, and a lot of people are not. A lot of people are trying to not necessarily phase themselves out of it, but to them, you shouldn't do it. When in reality, it is a language, it is a culture. So I think we need to advocate more that it is okay to speak Creole wherever you feel, especially if somebody is understanding you. Express the way you want to. Yes, sir. What part do you play in this? Because whenever you come and you sit, I know for a fact something good is coming out. Tell us.
Well, I am only playing a very supportive role. And I want to say this, because listening to Ivory, I realized just now that you have here a woman who is university educated, who teaches at our national university, yet she herself is going through a crisis of her own identity as it relates to language. Wow. And I think that's a powerful thing, that a writer can recognize her role in the space she's in. And to me, that is a very high form of engaging with your society. I brought Marlene calls it a rock. And so did Ivory yesterday.
Stone.
You said a stone, even worse. She said a stone. But it's really a ceramic.
Okay.
And there's a difference. Because yes, it has the elements of stone. It's not an accident, in my view, that on the eve of Emancipation Day, something we do not recognize in this society, which is, so Emancipation Day is tomorrow, that Ivory has brought forward an emancipation idea. An emancipation, yes, the day acknowledges the liberation of physical enslavement, but we have to recognize the psychological and mental enslavement that we all confront. So the stone or the rock, in 2013, which is a few years have passed, this stone I found when I went with some artists to a site called Nomul. But I found it on the road. It was part of the road because a construction company had bulldozed a 2,500-year monument.
Oh, we have not forgotten.
Yes, yeah, we haven't.
But what do we have? That was a Pengereng moment. What do we have today as our Pengereng moment? You know what we have? We have 90,000 plus school children that are getting ready for school in a few weeks. 90,000. So this is rare for a country to have 1/3 of its population in school. Live population. And still we are afraid to talk about our identity, about how we speak, about what colonialism could not erase, which is the language of who we are. And so I think, and because I am a history teacher, a teacher of stories, I have found in the past few years that whenever I only speak English to my students, but I use a lot of Creole language and a lot of Creole expression, and I encourage the expression in my students, both in spoken, and we obviously play a lot of games in how it's written, because I only have the one dictionary that Sylvana Woods worked on, and then we go to that dictionary as a kind of Bible of our identity.
Yes.
And I really want to express gratitude to Sylvana Woods, Dr. Sylvana Woods,
Dr. Sylvana
who worked tirelessly in the shadows, many times in the dark, in the sense that the society, our own society, always didn't publicly ridicule her because she comes from academia, and so we are, like the way we treat Colville Young because he's the Governor General. But even him, he has done exceptional work in this area. But there is still a huge gap. And I think that today, on the eve of emancipation, Ivory has introduced us to the Pengereng of our time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to inject a little quickly, the Belize Kriol Council has a language arm called the Belize Kriol Project, and those people are the principals on the dictionary project, Sylvana being, I guess, the most well-recognized one, but Sir Colville Young was on that theme as well, and a few other wonderful folks.
It's a mental shift that we all collectively have to progress through. Some people, I think individually, are starting to have their own enlightenment, but it means very little if society has not adapted to it. When we talk of how using Creole language in a formal setting versus an informal setting is perceived, it still is a challenge, you know. And it means that we have a lot of work to do. When you speak of Ivory's credentials, which I think, you know, speak for itself, you venturing into creating a book that will not only allow for a great story to be told, but also to be able to have it in the language that we know and love and grow up talking. But it takes the parents, it takes the schools, it takes everyone to be able to say it is okay that we embrace the Creole that we talk, whether the PG version of Creole or the Orange Walk version of Creole or the Belize City version of Creole, and to recognize it and respect it as a part of who we are and our culture. How do we get there? How does this book help us to get there?
Well, hopefully the book will serve as an inspiration to other writers, you know, to produce, you know, a robust body of literature that's going to expose our readership, our population to the language more and more. It's like, you know, publicity. One of the reasons why we gravitate toward, you know, certain soda, I don't want to give a free plug to anybody, is because we see it all the time and it becomes, you know, a household word. It becomes second nature. It becomes, it's right up there. So hopefully, and that is one of the roles of the writers, you know, to produce more of the kinds of literature, the kinds of stories that people can relate to, right? And of course, the Creole Council will always continue to play a leading role in this, in continuing to encourage people and advocate for the use of the language. We have been making some progress in the formal sphere, in that the Ministry of Education, not too long ago, in their language policy, explained or expressed that the students' mother tongue ought to be incorporated when appropriate. They haven't fully embraced it yet, but there is a start, right? It's official that the teachers ought to utilize the student's mother tongue when appropriate, whether it's Spanish, Garifuna, or Creole, or whatever. So there's some inroads.
I love that part of the conversation. You know, it enlightens about a lot, especially for the fact that we've got this thriving culture, which we should embrace because that's who we are, especially in speaking the language, no? But let's get to the book.
Yeah.
I want to know about the story in the book. What is this book talking about? And then from there we get to why that story comes to Pengereng. Because you gave a nice way of how, especially on the eve of Emancipation Day. So let's talk about the story in the book.
Very good. So there are two stories. One of them is about 24 pages, and that is the one that's translated into Creole. And the second story, well, the two stories are contemporary. And they both speak to situations and issues that are very relevant to today's reality, not only Belizean reality, but in all modern societies. And the first story, titled Stillborn and then Stillborn in the Creole translation, the protagonist is a young woman who is attending university in the States. She's from Esperanza. She's attending university in the States, and it's a love story. She falls in love. It's a beautiful love story, and then she gets pregnant. She gets pregnant. She finds out that she's pregnant a few weeks after she and Omar have broken up. Does that sound like Pengereng to you? That's Pengereng.
I put down Mr. Smoot now.
So now she has to find a way to, put the pieces together. And that is one of the I think important features of this story, that it it sheds light on the fact that we all have Pengereng in our lives. What do we do when we have that Pengereng, right? And so the character Diana has to make some really tough choices, and one of the choices that she has to make has to do with whether she's going to include the father in the life of the child. I'm not going to tell you what she does because I don't want to give up the story. You have to read the story. But the decision that she makes raises the all-important question that's so relevant to us today as to what is the role of the father in the child's life. Is a woman ever justified in excluding a father from the child's life, whatever her reasons are, and what are the implications to the family unit and hence the society when families are disrupted like that, when children are raised without a father. It's a very important question, and as I mentioned in some of the promotional material. Right now, we've just undergone the implementation of the curfew by the police department, and one of the attempts that we're trying to make to arrest the situation where we have youth delinquency, and one of the precursors to that is broken family unit. So that, and then the second story, the protagonist is Kechimaya farmer. And I look at it as also a love story. He's in love with his family, of course, and he's in love with the land, the 12 acres of beautiful, fertile land that he is trying to get title to. And also he's looking forward to the birth of his second child. When the wife goes to the hospital to have the child, all sorts of mishaps take place as a result of it's broken systems or poor systems and so on. But also I make the case that racism is an underlying cause as to why this woman was treated so badly that the child ends up suffering physical injuries in the hospital and dying not too long, a week after. And that story was inspired by, you guys will remember in the media, 2009, the death of Senaida Raimundo and the Jones's baby in the Toledo, in the PG hospital. It dominated the news for about a month almost. Yes. And I don't want that story to be forgotten because we have not yet fixed the underlying causes that led to that.
You also chose, I think, to write that story, and that's what really stood out to me the most. It's named Dear Editor.
Yes.
But you chose to write the story in a way that we see a lot of Belizeans trying to process their problems, which is accessing the media and writing in letters, or we do the call-in shows as well, where you feel the only place you can take your problem and try to get a solution is by seeking out a public atmosphere.
Yes.
Was that deliberate?
It was deliberate. As a matter of fact, when I read about the incident in 2009, the thing that stood out to me most strongly was Andy Jones, the dad's series of letters that he wrote to the Amandala. And I found his letters so powerful and so poignant in the way he is telling the story as to what happened to his wife and to his family. And I felt it was so beautiful, his style of expression. I said, I want to use those letters. And so I used 2 of his letters almost verbatim because I wanted his voice to continue to resonate down through the years so that we do not forget. I wanted him to tell, well, it's a fictional story now, so the character that I created is Valentina. I think Andy Jones, I spoke with him on the phone. I had a conversation with him a couple of years ago, but I have not yet met him in person, but I don't believe he's Maya. In the story, in the fictional version of the story, it's a Maya family, Kechi Maya, wife and husband. And so I wanted Valentina to be heard. I wanted the reader to hear that from Valentina himself, and in that voice that I thought was just so powerful. And so yes, indeed, speaking out to the media was his way of trying to take some power, some control, and to do something rather than just, a lot of people cower and, they fall victim to the circumstances. But he decided to do something about it at his very own peril.
So how do we get a hold of the book? Because just listening to it, it creates the interest of wanting to read it. Then again, there is a Creole side to it. So how can we get hands on this book?
Yes, it will be available. Well, this morning we're having the Belize City launch, and so naturally it will be on sale at the Image Factory 10 o'clock. And then thereafter it will be available at Brody's on Albert Street, at Dakers in Belmopan, are we going to have at the factory?
Sure.
At the Image Factory bookstore, and I'll announce other outlets afterwards, countrywide, and on Amazon. We're going to have it by the end of this week. It should be on Amazon in both ebook and paperback.
All right.
Now you keep on saying that this book is a Pengereng. Tell me why.
Well, the more I listen to Ivory...
You're soaking it in, I'm seeing that.
And also the cameraman, I'm paying attention to how intrigued he is. And I said, wow, Ivory is really talking up some serious stuff here. Really, we're involved in a radical process here. Sometimes we say radicalism as something shouting and loud, and we say Pengereng is loud, but there's also a silence that comes before and after the Pengereng. Writers are people who live in solitude most of the time. Ivory is smiling there. Very rare she would come in front of this camera, right? She spends most of her time just checking other people's writing. But the question that came to me while listening to her is this, and your question. Do we have Belizean literature? Do we have Belizean poetry? Do we have Belizean writing? Do we have Belizean research? But that to me is not the fundamental question we should ask as people who call themselves Belizeans. The fundamental question we should ask is, do we need Belizean literature, need Belizean poetry, need Belizean research? I'm not here to answer that question. That is part of my life. But the reason why I ask the question is because we sometimes think, Donald Trump style, that by waving a flag and showing a passport, that qualifies you to being a citizen that has duties and rights inside their community. And that is a sack of shit, if you ask me. Sorry, I should have told you I was going to say that. Because a community like ours, it's not just the Creole language that is under attack, but the Garifuna language
Yep.
and Maya language and other languages, we are all under attack. So I think the Pengereng is how do we recognize what is it that we're going to do tomorrow, the task for the following day inside our education system as it relates to this huge question that Ivory has posted and put on the table.
You know, after our last conversation with Ivory, I begin to wonder if you're not a bit of an anomaly in the system. Because, and I want you to address the number one criticism that we hear all the time. If we keep on allowing people to talk Creole, we will never master English. And English is the language you need to be able to maneuver the world.
You know how I answer that very
You're
easily?
getting red on me here.
I answer it very simply.
tough, yes.
It's a very tough question, but I answer it very simply. We love to fool ourselves, right? If we think our young people are reading English and writing English, we're lying to ourselves. There is an elite that's doing that. An elitist system, which is our education system, produces the Ivories, and me, I am part of that elite, produces a small percent, and we celebrate that. But what about the rest of the 90% that are speaking, interacting, engaging? And if you ask me, I have my phone right here. I don't know how to do it, but my children do. When they are writing on this, that is a different language. So why don't you criticize that if you want to criticize? And my view is not to criticize it. My view is, what is more important? Is it the ideas, the concepts, the motives, the desires inside our young people that we want to come out as communication, whether they're doing it in text language or Creole or Garifuna or Maya? To me, that is the fundamental question. Not that they speak a perfect English. You go to England today and you go on the street and listen to how those people are talking. They don't talk English. Yes, in their parliament they're talking. Yes, in our parliament we say we're talking English, but you listen to them, they don't talk English neither. So let us not be bamboozled into thinking that the hyper purists that present themselves to us as that language is this. Language is so many things. That's why I brought this thing, because language started off as a symbol, as a drawing. And 80,000 years later, it's going back to that in a way.
Yeah.
All those
And we're still guessing
my
how to
gosh.
interpret that.
So to me, the point is, should we be learning how to interpret rather than just parroting what somebody says languages?
Yeah.
Before colonialism, young African children learned 14 to 20 languages. We underestimate the most powerful part of our imagination.
And that's where I would like to interject. I am an English teacher,
And
so I will never issue English. I will always maintain that we need English. It's the most dominant world language. And so here in Belize, our official language, and we all need to master it. But if you could use me as an example, I grew up speaking Creole. And my English is not that bad. I don't think I suffered for it. When my daughter was learning how to talk, I was telling yesterday, I started out with the notion that I was going to speak to her only in English and let her learn English as a first language in order to give her the perceived, advantages in academia. And I tried that for a couple of, maybe 1 week. And it just didn't feel right to me. I suppose, I'm somebody who is that in touch with my Creole roots, and it's such an important part of my identity. It did not feel right to me at all, and so I abandoned the idea promptly. And I just, you feel just natural, you feel yourself. It's just soul language. Creole, your first language, whether it's Garifuna, Spanish, whatever, it's just soul language. And I felt that I would have been robbing my child of the opportunity to be her authentic self if I denied her Creole. And so I figured, you know what, I think she will be fine. I turned out okay. My English is not all that bad, so they'll be fine. But yes, our children are quite capable of mastering 2 or more languages simultaneously.
I think what you said about the authenticity is one of the things that really struck me the most. Even us, when this camera shuts off and we start to digest, we'll jump into Creole immediately.
So
I've always watched with fascination at press conferences, primarily our Prime Minister, when there's a point to drive home, it's in Creole.
That's right.
And it's in a classic phrase that summarizes what was said in maybe the 30 minutes before in English. Absolutely. So there's a level of connection that we have. And I think that, when you spoke of the word authenticity, I think that's what stood out the most. So you have this Pengereng that you'll put out there. How do we get it to the young people? Because I'm with you on the digital language, and even beyond the digital language, I think we have a lot of North American slangs that have become predominant in our society.
Yes.
You know, and we have a beautiful Creole word to capture what these people are saying online, but we don't use it. We want to use the lit and the whatever. I really would be behind if I tried to guess.
Time is running out, but I want to make this point because I'm listening to what you're saying. Right?
Yeah.
I teach history, so that in a class, I remember last year, it had British colonialism, blah, blah, blah. And I said, why will I put that there? I put it on the web.
Yeah.
The British, they come. Just the word they. And I asked them, what do you think about it? They said then something will happen and it's intense.
Something
Like,
went wrong.
yes, something
Yes,
went down.
yes,
As opposed to colonialism and
Yeah.
right? So when she said that even the Prime Minister used that, I realized, and I do it a lot now, that if I don't drive my lessons using Creole and the force of that language, the students will not learn.
They will not learn.
Yes,
they will not digest it.
And now all I tell them, if you put it on the test, put they and in bracket THE, so I know you know more.
Yes.
It has a visceral effect.
Yeah.
You know, in the
Yes,
gut,
visceral,
you really
visceral.
feel it.
That's
In being authentic, that's what you go back to.
Absolutely.
You know, and I always say, in order for people to get you, deliverance must be. And if I am to deliver something and I mean it, and I'm bringing it across, that in a Creole. Because it could be in Creole. But when you do it in a Creole, then that's authentically you. That's how I feel.
My real dream is to have all of us literate in our mother tongue. If you're a Garifuna, you should be able to be literate at the highest level in Garifuna and English. We can't move away from the English, etc.
All right, and in the meantime, pick up Pengerang, Brody's, Dacre's, Image Factory. It'll be on Amazon. What's the cost of the book?
$20 Belize dollars.
Fantastic. And you're having your Belize Day launch today.
And where are the other launches?
And in Belmopan tomorrow evening at 5:45 at the National Heritage Library in Belmopan. And then Saturday night at the Wildfire Artsmosphere Art Gallery on Waite Street, right across from the bus terminal. Artsmosphere, yes, right across from the bus terminal in San Ignacio.
Okay, nice. Wow. All right, and just curiosity, what's your favorite Creole word or phrase?
Bafo, you have to know that.
Why Bafo?
Because it was how I became confident as an artist. That the idea of failure and trying is the key.
Yes.
Because you are humiliated and ridiculed. All society loves to ridicule you, right? But the shield I use to just block all that out is the internalization of the buffer. I just say buffer if that's the way you want to know.
Do you have one?
Like, my favorite Creole word that Mickey is. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here and having this conversation with us. And best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll have our wrap up. So stay tuned. And we're back.
Wow, time flies by, especially when you're having a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun today, that much we could tell you.
Yeah.
But don't forget to check out the repeat of KTV, the remix. I think it's going to be on, I know they have
Friday.
Yes, on Friday. And
Thank
we're
you,
looking
Stephanie.
forward to, yeah, thank you. And we're looking forward to next week, Tuesday. Reason being is because the height of the competition. Things are getting now very hectic. And we get to see the characters, and we get to see how they try to enhance what they've got, their craft. So we're looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Send in those votes. Keep your favorite in the competition. Don't be disappointed next Tuesday. If you do your part, then your favorite will be back on the stage.
I love the fact that you say, do your part. All you need to do is to vote. But anyways, we've got to go. If you've got any questions, any concerns, don't hesitate to drop us a line at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can also drop me a line at Marlene_OYE at channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYE Belize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right. As per usual, keep your eyes, your minds,
and your hearts open. We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank, and Smart, bringing people together